All right, Christian, are you there?
I'm here.
All right, because we don't have you on visual today. I don't know. They said you looked green. I told them that's just the way you look.
I'm auditioning for a Herman Munster reboot, so I apologize.
So I didn't mention, but I will mention that Christian has a website called Hollywood in Toto. It's just spelled the way it sounds at hollywoodintoto.com. It's an excellent movie site, one of the very few knowledgeable conservative movie sites. You can find him on Twitter at Hollywood in Toto. And it's always good to talk to you because you're one of the few conservatives who actually knows something about the movies. So I always appreciate it. So I want to ask you about this excellent piece you did about the sense of decency in Hollywood. But before that, I think we should just talk briefly about the Oscars. Did you watch the show at all?
People say, "Oh, you review films for a living. How cool is that?" I say, "Yeah, but I have to sit through the Oscars each year. Each year it gets worse and worse." And I think this was the all-time low, just from a pure lack of entertainment point of view. But I have to say, the fact that Shape of Water, which is a nice movie but nothing more, won the Best Picture. It is sci-fi, it is weird, it is romantic, it is bizarro. So I give the voters a little bit of credit for kind of going outside the Oscar mold. It's not a biopic,
Hmm.
it's not a message movie from a sheer standpoint. So, but otherwise, just listen, we knew all the awardees would win because
Right.
we saw the 16 other awards celebrations. And it was woke on steroids. I mean, I couldn't believe it was almost a parody of what you feared the Oscars would be. And I just sat there, my mouth was agape.
They have become a parody of themselves. It is wonderful. I mean, I was playing earlier before you came on. I was playing that Hillary Clinton thing about how awful all the people who didn't vote for her are, and they really are living in that world. They're living in the world where everywhere and everyone who disagrees with them is basically evil. I mean, it has not occurred to them that people might have good and fully reasoned arguments against what they stand for. You wrote this article. Let me read. I'm just going to read just a very brief bit from this article about Hollywood losing its sense of decency. This is at hollywoodintoto.com. Confrontational, condescending, dismissive, sometimes even hateful. So much of what we hear out of liberal Hollywood these days is invective we wouldn't expect from anyone in our lives, friend or foe. Yet it's coming from folks whose very livelihoods depend on us supporting them. We indirectly pay their bills, and they can't stop insulting large swaths of us. So let's start with this. Give me some examples of what you're talking about.
Well, let's go with a couple. A lot of times it's based on Twitter, and I think that Twitter's been a horrible thing for actors because listen, they can spread the word about the new projects. I get it from a marketing point of view, but it really does kind of pull the curtain aside and let us see who they really are. Bette Midler saying she wished Rand Paul's neighbor, returned fire, so to speak, just so he wouldn't vote on on the budget. John Cusack calling the GOP a death cult. Just absolute hatred from stars atop one after the other. And then there's, of course, the media quotes like Jennifer Lawrence saying she wants to throw a martini in Trump's face. Robert De Niro can't stop saying he wants to punch Trump in the face. SNL, Saturday Night Live, saying that not just Trump is a racist, but his fans are racist too. It just goes on and on and on. Johnny Depp saying, wouldn't it be interesting if another actor took out a president? It's an unbelievable array. And this is after the Sarah Silvermans and the Louis C.K. Whatever happened to him, by the way, called Trump Hitler.
Right.
It goes on and on. I mean, I have a special list on Twitter for all the celebrities, and reading it is brutal. It's hate, it's invective. Ron Perlman has gone off the rails. The great actor from Sons of Anarchy
Right.
is so anti-Trump. It's just, you could just see it consuming his soul. And I'm thinking, there are good people in Hollywood, but they're getting drowned out by all these really nasty voices.
And it doesn't seem to occur to them, as you say, they are dependent on us for their livelihoods. It doesn't seem to occur to them that when you call Trump Hitler, that's calling us, the German people, when they would become Nazis. It's basically calling all his supporters Nazis. Why? What's going on? When did they lose? How did they lose their sense of proportion? And how did they lose their sense that maybe they were here to entertain us?
Trump broke them. I think it's plain and simple. I think they expected another 4 years of Obama-like policies. They wanted to get Hillary Clinton installed. It didn't happen. And it wasn't just any old GOP president. It was Donald Trump who offends them on so many visceral levels. I mean, I think it's the same thing that's happening with journalism. Trump broke journalists. There are people who you used to like, you used to respect. You would say, you know what? I don't know if I agree with them all the time, but they kind of bring their views to you in a very responsible, sober way. Now it's off the rails, and I think the same thing is happening with Hollywood. They haven't bounced back. It's been well over a year. It's time to kind of, put your kids to bed, go to work, punch the clock, and get things done and stop obsessing about the news cycle 24/7, but they can't.
They can't do it. Bill Whittle has this comment that movie stars become famous playing conservatives, and then they go weirdly liberal. So in other words, they become famous by playing police officers, by playing soldiers, by playing kind of conservative icons, people who use guns, and then suddenly it's like, oh, we hate the military, we hate the police, we hate guns. Do they never, I mean, they're supposed to be actors. They're supposed to involve themselves in their roles. Does nothing rub off on them? Is there no way? Why have they lost their connection with ordinary people, with their audience? I mean, besides Trump, how did they lose contact with us, the rest of us?
Well, it's a couple of interesting things. One is if you had an actor and he or she was cast as a monster, a villain, a serial killer, the first thing that actor will tell you is, I know he or she is a horrible human being, but I needed to get into the soul. I needed to empathize with this character. They don't seem to be able to do that with their audience, and that's amazing to me. But the answer I think is simple, even though it's cliched, is the bubble. They live in a life where they get all their views sort of mirrored back at them. They don't get opposing views, and I think a great example of this is Jennifer Lawrence, who, when she broke onto the scene, she was beautiful, she was talented. She was like the girl next door. She was kind of, aw shucks, you mean I'm a movie star? This is an Oscar? You're giving this to me? She was wonderful. She was refreshing. And now she is so incredibly full of herself in just a few short years, where she thinks she has to pontificate on politics to change the world. She thinks she's going to change the political system. Meanwhile, when you listen to her speak, she's not very bright.
She's an actress.
Yeah, I take nothing away from her ability. I thought she was very good in Red Sparrow. But I think there's a good example of how things change and how things change so quickly, is that they're in that ecosystem, and nothing else can kind of penetrate that bubble.
Yeah, she also does a nude scene in Red Sparrow, so I forgave her for everything. I'm a simple shallow man, Christian. Now there's this new thing going on in Hollywood, and the Oscars are a perfect example of it, where Will Smith didn't get nominated for a picture nobody saw. His wife said, oh, it's because he's black, which is absurd. He was the last, until that moment, he was the last star in Hollywood. And now this quota system has taken hold, and I know that agents are now getting calls, oh, we need a black female writer. We need, a woman director for this. We need a black star for this. They have to have, even they were talking about this, what was a diversity rider or something like this, where you have to have diverse people. Instead of hiring people for their talent, you're hiring people for the color of their skin. It seems to me that is death to art. I mean, am I wrong? Is that going to destroy what's left of the movie business, or am I overreacting?
I think it's an overreaction slightly, but I do agree. For every Ryan Coogler, who's a terrific director, he's behind Black Panther and Creed, and he happens to be black, there are going to be other directors of color who maybe don't have that skill set.
Right.
So when they're handed a huge project, if it fails, then Hollywood goes, oh, we tried the diversity thing, it didn't work. Instead of being genuinely open to all people, all genders, and saying, hey, we want the best of the best, they're going to kind of go this other route. And I think it's going to hurt the product and hurt kind of the connection that they have with their diversity mission, because they do have problems. If you look at how many women direct films, it's a very, very small number. There are issues in Hollywood that need to be addressed, but going this path, I think, is going to be damaging to the mission.
Because it is interesting, like during the 70s, this new crop of stars came up, Dustin Hoffman and Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, who looked suddenly different. They looked like the people who had immigrated during the first part of the 20th century, but it took them a long time to start to have stars who looked like Italians, who looked like Jews, who didn't look like blonde, wasps. But eventually they came up, and it wasn't because they said you have to hire us. It was basically because the times changed and their talent overrode everything. I just think, it's funny, if they would stop thinking that we're all racist, they would stop pushing themselves in our faces. It makes you upset when they say, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to hire this guy because he's black." Then you think, "Yeah, well, I'm not going to go to your movie because I'm white." How's that sound? You know? And I think if they would just let these guys rise on their natural talents, it would actually happen. All right, I got to go, but let me ask you: is there anything coming up that you're looking forward to?
Well, a couple of movies out now I was pleasantly surprised by. One was Game Night with Jason Bateman,
Huh?
a
Okay.
very funny black comedy. It gets silly toward the end, so expect that. But I laughed a lot, some good, solid lines. Also, Death Wish. I was really kind of dreading that one because I just thought it was pushed
Yeah.
around the schedule a bit. Does Bruce Willis still have it? And he does sleepwalk through the first third of the movie, although I think it's maybe a creative choice. But
Yeah.
it is a crowd pleaser. I saw it in a theater, and the crowd had a visceral reaction to some of the vigilante antics. So listen, ignore the 99% of liberal critics who lost their
They
minds
went nuts. Yeah.
blasting the film. It is a genre movie, and as such, it's quite good. So check out that as well.
All right. Thanks a lot. Christian Toto at HollywoodInToto.com or on Twitter at HollywoodInToto. It's always good talking to you, Christian. I'm sorry we're out of time, but you'll come back.
No worries.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot.